Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. This podcast is presented by Pandium, an integration platform for building native integrations.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to our podcast, Between Product and Partnerships, where we talk about the challenges and what it takes to build integrations, tech partnerships, and SaaS platforms. And today, we are so excited to have Mike Gelber, Chief Product Officer at Impiricus, join the podcast. Mike, can you share a little bit about your background with the audience?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, Cristina. Really appreciate it. So my name is Mike Gelber, Chief Product Officer here at Impiricus. We're a company that is focused on connecting healthcare providers with resources from pharma companies to deliver better patient care. We'll get a little bit into what that means. I have a background that sort of like starts out in finance. I then made a move into ad tech, where I got more and more technical, started my own company in the healthcare ad tech space, and then sort of joined forces with a company called Lasso that's in a really a similar space to what Impiricus is in, but more so focused just purely on the marketing side. And about a year and a half ago, we sold Lasso to IQVIA for a little under $500 million. And then I've now been at Impiricus for a little over a year.
Awesome. It's a very varied and interesting background. And I'm curious, it sounds like you've held different roles at these different kinds of companies. Can you share a little bit more about what made you transition between not just these industries, but also the types of roles within these industries?
Yeah, super interesting. So the easy one of that is the industry, is moving from finance into tech. And that also has a lot to do with the roles. So I started my career at JP Morgan as like an analyst, and I didn't mesh well with the archetype of that kind of role. We were basically, at the end of the day, we were managing money for billionaires, and there's not a whole lot that you can do to move the needle and be innovative there. So a little bit kind of like bored in that role, and I started learning VBA originally to like, the first thing I did was build a version of 2048 into an income statement so that I could like play 2048 and people wouldn't know. But then I actually started like automating some of the tasks that we did as analysts, and built tools for myself. But then those tools ended up getting distributed to other analysts in the bank. I was really excited about that. Our compliance officers were not. And when I saw this industry of finance sort of being like, you've created tools that save time, and that's actually a bad thing, that's when I decided to move into tech. And in tech, I sort of started on the client-facing side, which I really, really, really liked. But I had this almost, I don't want to say spiritual gap, but like a spiritual gap of how does all this tech that I'm interacting with work? So I started getting more and more technical, and that's when I got into like a quasi product role. And then I leaned in fully on the technical side, did a coding boot camp, got all of that knowledge. And when I took that to start my own company is when I was able to get not only the technical side, but also the commercial side, and selling to customers, also building partnerships, also doing work on the legal side. And honestly, I think all of that kind of comes together to form what is a product role. It's like the nexus of all those technical aspects with the commercial aspects as well. So it's kind of like a natural progression through a ton of different roles, where ultimately I was just like, all right, this is product.
And why start your own company? Like, if it sounds like you have a great sort of product acumen, and I agree with you about sort of the types of things that you think go into product. There are definitely product roles at some companies that are what I would consider to be more like academic. It's like, do an
Yeah.
opportunity assessment and present a PowerPoint, which like is legitimate. It's just not what you're describing, and I don't think it's not the same as working in a small tech company. But why not go like be a PM somewhere? Why did you have to start a company?
Yeah, that's so interesting too, how like the role of a product manager can change a lot based on the company. And the thing that I see that oftentimes differentiates how I view product is like the technical aspect. That's not like common across the industry, right? But anyways, your question was why start a company? Um, so honest answer, I basically after I did that coding boot camp, AppNexus had been bought by AT&T, and the sort of like innovative startup was beginning to transition into this acquired stalwart company. So I wanted to move on from that. I wanted to apply the programming and software development skills that I had gotten through this boot camp, but I didn't want to go be an engineer and just be fed Jira tickets and pump out code. I didn't think that would be fun enough. So I was like, I want to keep the technical side. I want to do more with that. I want to build something in business that users use. But I also want to spend time talking to users, and I want to do understand business management and strategy. And so like that actually at that moment, that's when I was like, well, I could become a product manager. But frankly, with that experience, it actually would have been hard, I think, to get a good product management job. Um, the other option was go to business school. Really glad I didn't do that one. Uh, and then the third rogue option was start a company. And it was basically looking at the business school option. I was like, that's way more expensive. Um, maybe it's more fun. I don't know. But I looked at the start a company option and was like, I could take a piece of the money that I would put into business school, do that, have a chance at success. And like, basically it timed up really well with just everything I was doing this boot camp, some of the market opportunities that I saw, and the connection that I had to my previous employer, AppNexus, and a little bit of like vision had baked inside me around what could be done. So I was excited about that.
It's interesting too to think about like what it means to be a PM at another company. And based on what you're saying, it sounds to me like you would like that sort of like early stage, kind of jack of all trades aspect of product management. But it's really hard to do that working for somebody at a really small company. Like I've just seen it. Like we work with product and engineering people all day. And I find that like that product management role can be really challenging at a really small company and in the relationship with the founders. Like it can be really good, but it can also be challenging, I will say.
I agree. I'm curious what you like. Tell me a little more about that though.
Oh
Um,
man, let's see, let's spill some tea. There's no actual tea. It's more, I think it depends on the type of founder that you're working with too. Like there are wide sort of ranges of like technical acumen versus commercial acumen versus more like straight product and marketing. But I
yeah,
do find that there can be an impulse if like the engineering org is not working for one reason or another to like bring in a PM to solve that problem. And at a really early stage company or a company that just doesn't have like a very well established market,
yeah,
that can be challenging. And I also think there's an impulse from founders, as one myself, potentially to want to hire maybe someone really junior to like do that role. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right fit. Like there can be this conflict between like the founder's idea of the product, a product manager who's supposed to own the product, like whatever function or dysfunction is happening in the engineering, or like I've just seen it in so many places. Um, that I empathize with the idea that like you just have to go do it yourself. Like you like I'm just going to start a
yeah.
company so that I like because you don't fit well necessarily into a lot of different orgs, and I think it can definitely work. I've just seen a lot of different versions of that relationship over the years. I'm curious if you agree. I could also just be making all this up. So
No, it's so fun. So I think I have a word for that. Like the silver bullet hire.
yeah,
Like it's like someone comes on and can fix everything. And sometimes a founder may like look at it as a look at a product person like that. Um, I've definitely seen that quite a bit, and like there actually probably are people that are are kind of like that. But they're not the easiest people to find. Like I've actually, I think of specific people in my head where I'm like, oh wow, that's actually a person that kind of fits that bill. But yeah, super
Yeah, yeah. I
interesting.
mean, like, and you're a founder too, right? And I think that founders can be really hard to deal with. Like, this is
Yeah,
primarily our fault, right? As in you as a former founder. Like, is the looking for that person, like, is that a realistic expectation for any hire that is not a co-founder? Right. Like, because at that point, the person is like really invested in your business and like really cares. And I don't know, it's an interesting balance, I think. And as you were describing, like what you enjoy about product management, I was thinking to myself, like a person taking that role at a small company can be very hard. It can be great too if you find the right fit. Um, but
it's
anyway,
almost it's like why would they want to come do that if they have those skills? You would think that they're maybe going to start their own company because they're capable of that.
well, and my question to you was like the inverse of that, right? It was like, why go start a company when you could take those skills to any job, right? So it's like, oh, well, I mean, it's just different strokes for different folks, I guess, right? And there's also the risk tolerance of starting a company that is not for everybody, as
Yeah,
you also well know.
yeah. I mean, well, on a personal level, my thought was like, by starting a company, I will actually sharpen all of these skills and get these skills that I don't necessarily have, and then I can find amazing companies like Lasso, like Impiricus, where I can get into those positions. Maybe I can be that like silver bullet hire for that company where I look at it and go, "That's an amazing opportunity. Let's go in there and see what we can do in terms of adding value."
Well, yeah, let's talk about Lasso. Like what prompted you to partner with them? Like at what point did you realize that that was going to be a good thing? And yeah, how did that unfold?
Yeah. So when I started Ad House, that's when I met the co-founder of Lasso, and we basically realized we had non-competitive, like adjacent business models. Ad House was focused on helping healthcare providers or HCPs advertise to patients, and Lasso was focused on helping pharma advertise to HCPs. Um, and we, I obviously first time starting a company, and there was some synergies around like the enterprise software that we were using, for example, AppNexus, like access to that industry expertise, connections. And like at the end of the day, it was actually the longer term vision of when both of these businesses grow and mature, they mesh really well together. And there's opportunities for data sharing, like co-building products, things like that. So it was longer term vision. It was also like the ease of just getting the business off the ground. It frankly kept our costs lower and allowed for partnership on both sides.
What I guess what did you learn through that acquisition about growth and how you liked kind of going through that process and then working for another company again?
This is super specific, but honestly, I think I learned the importance of sales and how to sell. The biggest takeaway that I had from Ad House was the idea of like finding product market fit and really selling it before you build it. So that was something that a lot of people said to me, like, oh, well, see if you can get users before you build this. I'm like, but we don't have like, it's all about the user experience, and we don't have the software, and they're not going to buy it if they don't have it. And it's like, that's always just an excuse. You can find creative ways to get people, see if you can get people to sign up for something before you go and invest either hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of hours into building the software. Well, now with vibe coding, it's maybe tens of hours, but um, always find out if people want to use it before you build it. And that is something I tell that, like when people come to me today for advice on starting a company, I always give that piece of advice, but I preface it with, I don't think you're going to follow this, and I think you actually have to learn it on your own. I'm going to tell it to you anyway. But I was told this multiple times, and it just didn't internalize. And now for me, like the first thing that I always think about is, are people using it? Maybe you have a thesis, but like get dollars in the door before you go and build something.
How would you advise that folks do that? And I know it's going to be different for different industries, but like you working in like a healthcare and healthcare adjacent industry, there's like a pretty high barrier to getting
Yeah.
into a lot of like whether it's individual doctors or these pharma companies, like how would you start that even in just that industry?
Yeah. So didn't say it was easy. But it 100% will vary. But um, I think I'm going to use a friend of mine that has like a company idea that he's been workshopping now. And he kind of like already went through this whole process. Um, he wanted to create a app that was like a mixture of LinkedIn and like Hinge for like freelance workers, like mainly like event photographers. I don't know. Just a swiping factor on Hinge.
Sure.
No, um, and so like there's a couple of different ways that you could do that. Today with vibe coding, I was like, okay, we'll go build a prototype, just get it on the app store so you can get people to download it. But like the way that I think is really good is actually trying to offer it as a service where you can first. And if that means like putting a UI on it or something, and then the back end is literally you going and creating profiles for people or going and like in his case, it'd be like someone needs a photographer for an event. Can you then go source? Here's portfolios that are all in the same format for these 5 photographers. Here's reviews that I have on them. Like super manual version, but do you do that? And then does the user want to use it again before you go try and build this huge company, get a really expensive piece of software, and then no one wants to use it? That's specific to like a consumer, two-sided
Mhm.
app. Um, there's different versions of that for pharma and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of services like generally. I think there's ways to do it in a B2B context where you're like not losing massive amounts of money and it allows you to dog food and like also build a lot of trust with your buyer or your user. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you guys did that like when you were selling into some of these pharma companies, but like I think you can get over a lot of product maturity challenges if folks like trust you and are feel like you know what you're talking about, like, as an actual human or the people that work with you. Because I can't even imagine what it would be like to try to, like, sell a newer product into that type of market. Like
Yeah. I mean, so the first time we sold, like the first client that we sold on Lasso we did that fully managed service.
mhm.
And I will tell you that the software was not ready. Like the back end was like effectively non-functional, and we were running these as managed service campaigns. We were able to give a platform demo, but like the client absolutely loved us because what we delivered was amazing. And then it doesn't matter because eventually we built it into the software. But that creates you're taking off at the beginning of the runway instead of like building an entire runway and then you know taking all that time to launch.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, like, MVP scope creep, I think, that can happen if you don't have that, like, sort of like, that live user interaction. Like, if you ask
Yeah.
people what they want, they will tell you, like, everything. But if you observe what people actually need to achieve the goal, that can often be a small subset of what people say they want. And this is all for our listeners. I don't know anything about consumer apps, so this is all about B2B. I don't know how you do anything when you're trying to deal with non B2B software, like, literally nothing. So
That's that's something I've been learning with Empiricus. But yeah, the MVP scope creep, like imagine that scope creep when you don't have a user. Like it's basically limitless.
yeah,
So
it's as much as you can dream up, which if you can dream it, an engineer can build it and charge you for it. So there's an infinite amount of opportunities. Let's talk about Empiricus. What made you join them after starting a company, merging with another company, and now going to a PM role, as we were discussing before? What about it excited you?
yeah, so a lot. Okay, the I'll break it down into like product and then company. The product was really exciting to me because when I first, like the first time I heard about Empiricus, basically all the messaging behind Empiricus from the market was just around SMS. Empiricus is a lot more than just an SMS company, but they were really the first to do HCP SMS in pharma. And I heard that, and frankly, at first I was like, had a lot of doubt. I'm like, oh, when I get a text message, sometimes I'll just like delete it, or I'll be like, why am I getting this message? And when I started understanding the story, from how Impiricus approaches it and the steps that they basically take to ensure that there's actually value add and that we're not spamming doctors, then I started thinking like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Then when I heard about what was actually happening with the product in market and the fact that so at Lassa, when I served millions of or billions of banner ads to millions of HCPs, and there was clicks and views and impressions and conversions or whatever, I never talked to a doctor that was like, oh, I saw this banner ad and got something useful from it. Or like, I was going to not prescribe my patient this drug because they weren't going to get coverage. And then I saw this banner ad and then I realized I could. Like that just never happened. And in SMS, this was really after I jumped, but I started seeing when I had the like, holy crap, this is like the right move moment. I started seeing, cases where HCPs were replying, either saying, cool, this is great, or I need more information on this thing. Or in the best case, like, I have a patient that I need help with getting on your medication that currently isn't able to get access to it. That is absolutely the only like one-stop shop for the industry, game-changing stuff on the product side. Company side, incredible people, super smart, scrappy, very little fundraising done, super organic growth, multiplying revenue every year, growing a ton, all the stuff that I look at and get like super excited
Easy peasy. Uh, I'm
about.
curious when you talk about the doctor feedback, are you, as the person running product, actually receiving that directly? Like, do you talk to these folks and like get to see that look on their face? Because I love that.
Yes. And at multiple touch points, we have our co-founder is a doctor, so that kind of helps. We have an entire council of doctors that are closely involved in the Impiricus side where they're helping like just talking to us about how we should message HCPs, what kind of messages are useful, what's the framework around like how often and what times we should message. Then on the doc update side, we have like thousands of HCPs that we can call on at any time for feedback. And frankly, in the industry, that is it's like sad to me, but like very uncommon. We like biggest industry conference of the year happened kind of recently, Fierce Pharma. We were the only company that brought like healthcare providers from the field. We had like 5 HCPs there. And I'm like, why is everyone here talking about how to do this, but not involving doctors? So yeah.
I bet that gives you guys a lot more credibility too, right? Like being able to have folks there that actually are practitioners, more or less. Like that helps.
It does. I mean, honestly, the focus is like building things that make doctors' lives better. Um, Sometimes I think pharma will be like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool. You guys have doctors that are involved." But our focus is definitely like on it just builds a better product. It's a flywheel situation.
And I'm curious, and I think we're coming up on time here, but I'm curious at Empiricus, like how do you guys measure success in terms of maybe from the product, from the customer success, like and how if you're responsible for figuring that out, like how did you triangulate on those metrics?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of metrics all like across the board, right? So we have product level metrics. Up like on the pharma side, it basically comes to like script lift. So that's what a lot of our clients will just care about is versus a control group. What did this group of HCPs do in terms of lift in prescribing behavior? On the HCP side, whole bunch of metrics depends on the product that we're talking about. The thing that I care about there, this I guess isn't really a metric, but it's like the magic of like, can we give physicians a experience that is seemingly magic? And in Doc Update, like they're able to go into this mobile app, request a sample of drug X, and then they get that delivered to their practice a week later. Whereas in the past, they would have had to go to Google, type in drug X, go to the website. Then they realize it's the patient website. They go to the HCP site. Then they click into the samples portal. They make a login. They go through this eligibility check. Like, really not great experience. And now they're kind of like, wow, this is amazing. So there's those two. That's like the pharma side and the HCP side. But like those coming together and basically us building an integration into something useful from pharma, using data to connect with the HCP at the right time, where maybe this HCP just had a patient whose prior auth was denied, meaning they asked insurance to cover this medication and insurance said no. And then we messaged the HCP right as that occurred. The HCP then is, free form texting and says, oh, my patient just got denied on prior auth. What's going on? We're able to connect them to a pharma rep in real time in SMS. They don't have to download another app. They don't have to go to another channel or anything like that. And everything gets sorted for them right there. That's the combination of those two. I know that's not like a metric. That's a story. But yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's user satisfaction, right? And you can kind of measure that with an NPS, but there's a lot of nuance that's lost in a lot of that stuff. I do think there's
actually,
what?
I'll revise my answer. NPS. No,
I mean, but do you, it's NPS is fine, but I do think that either in person or on video conversation can be so helpful, to get the real story and really see where some of the pain points are. Because, someone can give you a high NPS score, but their high NPS score might just be I'm not going to be mean. Of course, I'm going to give them a high NPS score versus someone else's where they're holy S, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen. And that score might be the same, right? But there's a objectively different response to your point to that story and the way that they feel coming out of that experience. That can be hard to measure in a metric.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, I think we are coming up at time. I feel like you and I could talk about this stuff forever. What do you want to plug? Is there anything you'd like to plug for the audience, hiring or webinars or anything cool you guys got going on?
We have a lot of exciting stuff happening. We have a new product launching called Ascend. By the time this releases, there will be quite a bit of buzz going on about that. We also were just awarded #1 fastest growing company in the US by Deloitte for their Fast 500 list. And yeah, I mean, we're hiring, I think, 100 roles in the next 6 months. So if you're interested, reach out. And yeah, a lot of exciting things going on, but I really appreciate the time. It was great talking with you.
I know, this is so much fun. Thank you again for spending some time with us. And to the audience, if you're interested in learning more about partnerships, integrations, product, you want worksheets, you want blog posts, you want more podcasts, pandium.com is the place to go. You can also find both of us, I'm sure, on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat about this stuff. And yeah, Mike, thanks again. And I'm sure we will see you out there.
Cool. Thanks, Cristina.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. For more content on tech partnerships, integrations, and APIs, check out our articles, ebooks, and other resources in the description or visit Pandium's website.